Hey guys, it's Boxbro. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about a Fallout 76 build guide, and it's pretty much going to be for heavy weapons and power armor. I think heavy weapons synergize very well with power armor. You can still use this guide as a rough reference if you're not going to be using power armor, but you just won't be able to use heavy weapons to their full potential without power armor. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So, I'm using this website called nukesdragon.com/fallout76/perks, and I'll go ahead and have this linked in the description, but essentially it's a perk or build planner, and it allows you to kind of plan out how many points you have to allocate and like what cards you want and what cards you want to have that can be swapped out. So I'll go ahead and run you through what I think is best for a heavy weapons power armor build, and I'll go ahead and make sure to mention if a card requires you to use power armor, and then you'll kind of see why it's kind of better to use heavy weapons and power armor in conjunction rather than apart. So we're going to go ahead and go from left to right, starting with the strength tree. The strength tree is probably your most important tree as a heavy weapons build, because you're going to need these perk cards right here, which is just increasing the damage of your non-explosive heavy weapons. And so we're pretty much talking about the heavy weapon machine guns like the 50 cal, the Gatling gun, or even like the Gatling plasma, Gatling laser. This does not include stuff like the Fat Man or just the rocket launcher or like the new BOS launcher. This is where these perk cards won't account for that. But yeah, so these cards are pretty much the core of the build. You're gonna want Master Heavy Gunner, Regular Heavy Gunner, and Expert Heavy Gunner, and this will allow you to actually get 20%, and then you get another 20%, and you get another 20%, so you're getting 60% extra damage with non-explosive heavy guns, which is going to be really good for increasing your overall damage output. And so yeah, this is right here is going to be 9 strength points. So if you want, you could do just 9 strength points with this build at minimum, but there are some other strength perks that can help your heavy weapon build if you want. More specifically, there's this one called Lock and Load. You can reload your guns faster, so if you don't like the reload animation taking so long for certain heavy weapons, you can speed up the reload speed. Faster reload speed in between magazines generally means faster DPS if you're going to be fighting in extended fights where you're going to have to be reloading like multiple magazines. Then Lock and Load can be a bit convenient. If you like to carry a lot of different heavy weapons, you can add in Bear Arms, and this is going to make heavy weapons weigh 90% less. Personally, I don't use this one anymore, but I do use Bear Arms because I'm holding like 3 or 4 multiple different heavy weapons in case something breaks, or like for multiple scenarios, like if I have a right now I use a Gatling gun as my day-to-day heavy weapon, but if I want a boss killing weapon, I'll use my Gatling plasma, a Fat Man for fun, and then I have a 50 cal as well for fun. So, that's just kind of like a personal preference because I do like to carry multiple weapons and use them. Another one that is really good is if you want to be tankier. I also use this one actually. Let me go ahead and equip this one. So Bullet Shield is you gain 60 damage resistance at max rank while firing a heavy gun. So if I'm just like face tanking or spraying into an enemy and it's going to be hitting me while I'm attacking it or while I'm shooting my heavy gun, I'll have a extra 60 damage resistance on top of my power armor resistance. So this makes you a little bit extra tanky. On top of this, if you want, you could swap out Bear Arms. If you just want to focus on the tankier side of being a heavy gunner while still doing damage, you could swap out Bear Arms and instead go for Blocker. Blocker will give you 45% less damage from opponents with melee attacks, so this could be like a Scorched Beast Queen swipe. She hits you with your wing, a like Scorched meleeing you with a wrench, anything melee, and you'll take 45% less damage. So this is really good for being tankier, or like a Deathclaw strike, you'll be able to tank those a bit easier. So you can kind of decide on what you think you like. I think the only mandatory core ones would be the damage ones, these 3 right here, and then it's up to you if you want to carry more weapons or if you want a bit to be a bit more tanky. And then I have Strong Back for emergencies. If I take off my damage cards and slap on Strong Back, if I'm in a situation where I'm overweight and I can't get to a vendor, then I'll just put on Strong Back and then I'll fast travel really quick. Same thing with Pack Rat there. And then we can look at some of the other strength cards. Let me just make sure to see if there's anything else that's helpful. If you really want, you can do 90% less weight for ballistic weapon ammo if you're going to be hoarding a bunch of ballistic ammo for like your minigun, for example. But honestly, I don't think the ammo weight cards are that worth, just because ammo doesn't generally weigh that much. I would say if you're having issues with how much your ammo is weighing, I would consider carrying less at a time, because generally speaking, like right now, I carry a couple thousand rounds of of ultrasight Gatling ammo, 5mm, and it doesn't really bother me in terms of how much weight. So Pain Train is another one that you could equip, since it is power armor, where you damage and stagger enemies by sprinting into them with power armor. But honestly, I feel like instead of sprinting into enemies, it's better to just shoot them. My experience and from my research, Pain Train doesn't seem very good. The damage and like the stagger isn't very useful. Another one that could work for power armor is sprinting in power armor consumes no extra fusion core energy, but in my opinion, farming fusion cores is pretty easy enough where I don't think it's worth trying to reduce the cost or use of fusion core energy with perk cards, so I kind of just don't use that either, or don't recommend it. And I think that's going to be pretty much it for the strength tree. I mentioned everything that I thought would be worth talking about and like why I wouldn't use it. If there's something that I didn't go over and you're curious if it would be good or not, you can go ahead and leave a comment and I'll go ahead and reply with my opinion. And next we're gonna go ahead and go on to the perception tree. The perception tree in this build is gonna have the smallest or the lowest amount of points allocated, and that's because there's just not very much perception perks that actually benefit a heavy weapons build. So the main one that we want to go ahead and use for a heavy weapons build is actually just going to be interchangeable between either Exterminator, if you know you're going to be fighting bugs, because it gives you 75% armor negation against insects. So if you're going to be doing an event like Heart of the Swamp, where there's going to be a lot of Murlocs, slapping on Exterminator will increase your damage against them. If you're not going to be doing any fights against bugs, it's generally good to just have Glow Sight on, which is 60% extra damage against glowing enemies. So if you're in a nuke zone, or if you're in a event like Radiation Rumble with lots of glowing enemies, 60% extra damage against them. And then you also have just enough perks to equip all of the picklocking perks if you need to picklock something. So that's pretty much it, just 3 perks in perception. I don't think there's even any honorable mentions or anything to talk about. But like I said before, if you have anything that you want to ask me about, feel free to, like in any of the perk categories, and I'll give you my opinion. But yeah, I think this is good for the perception tree. For endurance, we have 7 points, and that is mainly just for tankiness. That's pretty much what all I use the endurance tree for. Right here we have Lifegiver, which gives me a total of 45 maximum health, so it just makes you a little bit healthier, a little bit more tanky. And then you also have Fireproof, and this means you take 45% less damage from explosions and flame attacks. So I think this even counts towards Scorched Beasts. When they do their like sonic attack and it explodes, you take less damage, you know, enemy Molotovs, that sort of thing. So yeah, pretty much just use this tree for tankiness. We can go and take a look at the endurance cards and see if there's anything else worth mentioning. If you prefer, you can swap out one of these cards and instead go for well-fed. If you don't mind, you know, keeping up your food and you want the well-fed benefits, that can be a positive as well. Over here, Rejuvenated. Yeah, so if you want, you could slot this in and get the increased benefits from being well-fed and well-hydrated. But I don't think there's anything else that's really worth it other than that. Of course, a lot of this is up to preference, but in terms of optimization, if you really want to be that tanky heavy gunner, then yeah, you probably want to just take the tank perk cards. Alright, and the next tree is going to be Charisma, and this Charisma tree is pretty much going to be optimized for damage and kind of support play, but we have 6 points in it, and we're pretty much just going to take Tenderizer and Suppressor. So Tenderizer, make your target receive 10% more damage for 10 seconds after you attack. So pretty much when you attack a target, if you're working with a group or even just by yourself, I think it procs by yourself, they take 10% extra damage. And then Suppressor it reduces your target's damage output by 30% for 2 seconds after you attack. So pretty much when you attack, they're going to be taking 10% more damage and dealing 30% less damage. So I just think those are pretty much the important perks for Charisma. Nothing else is really going to benefit damage in any way, or tankiness, or anything that will really help the build. Our next tree is going to be Int, and I think I'm going to do Int and Luck kind of hand in hand, because there's some options here depending on how you want to do it. But I've kind of made my build so that I can double dip into explosive damage. So your explosives do 60% extra damage. So right now I use an explosive Gatling gun. That way I can benefit from the heavy gun damage bonuses along with the explosive damage bonuses. So the bullet itself, when it hits the target, gets all the heavy gunner bonuses, and then when it procs the explosion from the legendary effect, the explosion does 60% more damage. And this would also work for the Gauss minigun, which I'm going to eventually be working towards. So that's why I use Demolition Expert. And then Stabilize is a really important one, but this one is only good if you're using heavy guns and power armor. So you would just miss out on the on ignoring armor and on accuracy, which I think is really important for damage. Like ignoring armor actually makes the damage much better. That's why I think it's better to use power armor and heavy weapons together. That way you get this perk card. Increased accuracy and increased armor ignoring. So that's Stabilized, and then I use Demolition Expert. Some honorable mentions here is Power Patcher, if you want. If you feel like your power armor breaks pretty often, mine personally doesn't. Usually just the legs break, but that's about it. Then you could use this, but from experience, I don't think it's that worth to have. I only equip this card when I'm about to repair because it makes the repair cheaper. Then there's Power User. Fusion Core duration is now doubled. I think this card is only really viable if you're using a weapon that uses fusion cores, because then the ammo capacity is also doubled, in which case I could see you justifying using it in a build. But otherwise, I think fusion cores are pretty easy to come by, so I probably wouldn't use it. Fix It Good is a good card to have. Not always equipped, but pretty much equip it when you're going to repair. That way you can repair them past the normal condition to 200%. You want Fix It Good plus Power Patcher to repair your power armor at the same time. That way you get it for cheaper and for better. And if you're going to be crafting power armor for the first time, I would recommend crafting it with Powersmith. That way it starts with improved durability. And then once you do all the repairs, you can use the other combo, and it will give you your power armor pretty much the best durability and repair status, and repair costs and whatnot. There is a perk card called Portable Power. All power armor parts and chassis weights are reduced by 75%. I don't think this is really good because most of the time your power armor should be on a chassis, and a chassis is already going to be like 10 pounds only. So a 75% reduction of 10 pounds is not that significant. I mean, 10 pounds by itself is already not that significant. So I just don't think it's worth the 3 perk points. And, you know, I already kind of explained earlier how I feel about the energy weight. I just don't think wasting perk points on reducing the amounts of ammo it weighs is worth. I think you should just carry less ammo if you're finding issues with that. Nerd Rage is pretty good, but I think it's only good for a bloodied build because you're going to be at that health threshold. But for this build, this is going to be for full health, so Nerd Rage wouldn't benefit you as much. Therefore, I don't take Nerd Rage. And I think that's all that there is to mention for the int tree. Now that I talked about the int tree, I'm going to quickly talk about the luck tree because I do want to mention that there is a card that can be interchangeable. If you're not going to do Demolition Expert, you just want to use heavy weapons with no explosive legendary effect, or you're not using the Gauss minigun, or you just don't care about the extra explosive damage as much, then you could equip Gunsmith instead, which will make your heavy guns break 50% slower. And then in that way, for the luck tree, you wouldn't have to use Luck of the Draw. So I always like to have one perk that helps my guns kind of upkeep themselves in terms of like durability and repair. So I either use Gunsmith or I either use Luck of the Draw. If you want and you don't want to repair your guns as often, you could use both, but you would have to sacrifice some damage. So for this, I sacrificed Gunsmith so that I could have the extra explosive damage, but in turn, I went ahead and took Luck of the Draw in the luck tree, which gives a weapon a chance to repair when hitting an enemy, and it procs pretty often with heavy weapons because of how fast they fire, how many rounds they can get off, and it ends up repairing the weapon and keeping it going for quite a bit longer. Here we have Bloody Mess. This is pretty much a core perk card for any build, I think, for any damage build. Pretty much a 15% damage bonus. Yep, that's it. Makes them explode too. But, so you're getting 60% from the strength, you're getting 15% from Bloody Mess, so that's already 75%, plus you're getting 60% extra damage from the explosive damage, and they're taking 10% extra from Tenderizer. And if they're a glowing enemy, another 60% extra damage, so you get a lot of damage bonuses. I think Bloody Mess is pretty much one that you can't really go without. And then we have One Gun Army. This one is good for heavy guns, gaining a 12% stagger chance and a 12% chance to cripple a limb. So your heavy guns, you could like shoot at their legs, cripple them, or even stagger enemies and keep killing them. So that one's generally pretty good. We can look at some of these other luck perks. We have one here, Ricochet. If you want to be tankier, you can have an 18% chance to deflect back enemies' range damage. And while I'm in power armor, Ricochet actually procs quite a bit. So you'll take no damage from the attack, and it'll just go ahead and ricochet back. We don't care too much about how much damage it does back to the enemy, but more the fact that you didn't take any damage. Just adds to your tankiness. And so the reason why I talked about these two skill trees together is because let's say I want to use Gunsmith. We can go and put on Gunsmith. Then that means I don't want to double up on these two. So then that means I could take off Luck of the Draw, and instead I could put on Ricochet. So now I'm tankier, I still have one gun army, and I still have the damage. But I think the way I'm running it right now, I actually took off one gun army, and instead kept Ricochet, Bloody Mess, and then I went for Luck of the Draw, and then instead of Gunsmith, I have Demolition Expert. This is pretty much what my build looks like. Yeah, this is pretty much exactly what my build looks like right now. And I'll go ahead and talk about the agility tree. So we have 8 points in agility. We have the Action Boy, Action Girl, and this pretty much just makes it so your AP regenerates 45% faster. So if you're sprinting a lot, that sort of thing, or even if you're using VATS. But for this build, I don't really use VATS, so usually in power armor, most power armor builds don't use VATS because it does drain core energy quite quick. But yeah, 45% faster action points. And then the next one that's really good is Adrenaline. So gaining 10% extra damage up to 60% per kill for 30 seconds, and the duration refreshes with the kill. So pretty much as you're killing groups of enemies, your extra damage will just start ramping up. So we have the 60% extra damage from Strength. We have 10% bonus from Tenderizer. If they're glowing, another 60%. We have Armor Piercing from Stabilized. We have the Adrenaline extra damage, and we have the Bloody Mess extra damage. So this build is pretty optimized for dealing really good damage. Alright, so next up we have the legendary perk cards, and you can get quite a bit of different legendary perk cards, but it does take you a bit of time to actually get to the area where you can actually get this many perk cards. Yeah, you're gonna need to be level 200 for this next slot. So just to have 4 perk cards, I believe you have to be 150. Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about which legendary perk cards will benefit this build the most. There's a couple of them, and it's honestly, I think legendary perk cards are a lot more subjective as to like what you think will, like what's your style, you know, like what will benefit your play style a lot. If you like to use the more hungry, ammo-hungry weapons, Ammo Factory can definitely be a really good legendary perk card for the first one to get, because it allows you to produce a lot of ammunition while crafting. So you combine this with Super Duper and Ammo Crafter in the agility tree, and you can get lots of ammo very cheap. So if you use like a minigun as your main weapon, or even a LMG, or you know, like a 50 cal or something, then Ammo Factory could be pretty beneficial. If you're using more ammo efficient weapons like the core weapons or the Gatling gun, then or Plasma Caster, this probably won't be needed as much, and I personally don't take it because I think I can usually just farm daily ops for ammo, and then, you know, I can use other means to craft ammo. Generally not too bad. Another one that I like is enemies killed with ranged weapons have a 20% chance to explode. So when you kill an enemy, if they're grouped up and they explode, you know, they're going to be dealing damage to their friends. And I don't know exactly if this does synergize with the explosive damage, but if it does, then perfect. Kind of hoping it does, but you know, nothing's really confirmed in that regard. But this is not too bad since you are going to be using ranged weapons. Another one is Power Sprinter. This one I can highly recommend. It just allows you to sprint much longer in power armor, so during daily ops I can see this coming into effect a lot more. I can sprint to the next alpha or bravo really quickly by just, you know, having Power Sprinter there. It allows me kind of last longer. Another good one is Power Armor Reboot. If you find yourself dying, you have a good chance to actually revive yourself. So that one I do take as well. And then you also have another one which is more of a supportive play, but taking one for the team. Enemies take 40% more damage when they attack you if you're on a team. So, you know, if you're tanking aggro, if you're in the front line, just kind of like face tanking everything and everybody's hitting you, then they'll take 40% more damage, which is generally pretty good. And if you're on a team, you can just be in a public team, you can be in a private team. I always recommend being in at least a casual public team, so this card can always be beneficial. If you want more perk points to allocate, you can use these legendary ones where you get 15, where you can get up to +5 in each of the perk trees, but they do cap at 15 still, so you can't go to 20. But you can have more trees at 15, like if you by using legendary perks, if you want to have a little bit more variety or variation in your perk build. A lot of people do like Master Infiltrator too, just so they don't have to swap, but honestly, I know this one's really convenient, but I think there's definitely better choices, especially when when Bethesda has talked about possibly doing a perk loadout. So maybe you could just quickly switch your loadout, hack and unlock, rather than using a legendary slot for the Infiltrator. Another good one, if you're using Power Armor, is a 10% chance enemy energy attacks recharge your Power Armor's Fusion Core. So yeah, a lot of people tend to use this, and I think it like doesn't do like I don't think you take damage if it procs, and I think instead it just recharges your Fusion Core, because I see a lot of people saying that fighting robots after using this perk card is a lot easier. And that's gonna be pretty much all of the legendary perks that I think are worthwhile. And yeah, those are pretty much all of the perk cards that I would recommend. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know in the comment section below. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you're kind of new to making a heavy weapons build, that's gonna be full health utilizing Power Armor. The only component, if you're not using Power Armor, you probably just can't use Stabilized, but that leaves more room to use some of the other ones, and some of the other Power Armor perk cards that I mentioned won't be relevant, but still doable. You'll just miss out a lot on the 45% armor penetration, which I think is pretty important for damage, but you know, it's up to you. You don't have to really play this game with like the best perk set or anything like that. You can kind of just play with whatever feels good. So as long as you're happy, then that's all that matters. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions about other perks that you might want to consider for the build, and you want my opinion, you can comment below and I'll give you my opinion. But yeah, otherwise, until next time.